So we are going to talk about basic market research more in depth in this class.
Excuse me, Mrs. Clark.
Yes.
I think your voice is not so
Clear?
good, not so audible.
Is it better now?
Uh, Excuse me?
Is it better?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the general definition of a market research is the function that links the consumer, customer, and public to the marketer through information. And this information is used to identify and define marketing opportunities and problems. It can be used to generate, define, and evaluate marketing actions, monitor marketing performance, and improve understanding of marketing as a process. And for the businesses and the organizations, market research is defined a little differently. As you can see, the systematic gathering and interpretation of information about individuals and organizations. It uses the statistical and analytical methods and techniques of the applied social, behavioral, and data sciences to generate insights and support decision-making by providers of goods and services, governments, nonprofit organizations, and the general public. What we will discuss today is basic techniques on how to conduct market research as organizations. And why should organizations make market research? Market research serves several useful roles in organizations. Most importantly, market research can help organizations by providing answers to questions firms may have about their customers or competitors, answers that could help such firms improve their performance. Specific questions related to this include identifying market opportunities, measuring customer satisfaction, and assessing market shares. There are many ways you can conduct market search, or you can pay for it as a service. You can supply it to yourself from an outside source. And I want to talk about briefly about the providers of market research. We're going to firstly talk about internal providers. Many organizations have people or departments or other companies working for them to provide market research. And most market research is provided internally by specialized market research departments or individual people who are tasked with this function. Actually, in 2015, a study was done about this in the USA, and it says that 25% of organizations have at least one person tasked with carrying out the market research. About external providers, they are either full service providers or limited service providers. Full service providers are generally large market research companies, and they provide syndicated data and customized services. Syndicated data are data that are collected in a standard format and not specifically collected for a single client. Those data or analysis based on the data are sold to multiple clients. Large marketing research firms mostly collect syndicated data because they have the resources to collect large amounts of data, and they can spread the costs of collecting this huge amount of data over a number of clients. And limited service providers specialize in one or more services, and they tend to be smaller companies. They generally offer specialized services. Segment specialists concentrate on specific market segments. They do not focus on a particular industry, but their focus is usually on a type of customers. For example, age demographics, racial demographic, or financial demographics, etc. Field service firms focus on executing surveys, determining sample sizes, and collecting data. Some of those firms also translate servers or surveys or provide addresses and contact details. And lastly, specialized service firms and all-encompassing term for the companies with specific technical skills. And because of that, they only focus on specific products or aspects of products, like market research on taste and smell. Those firms may also concentrate on a few highly specific market research techniques, or they may focus on one or more highly specialized analysis techniques, which I will briefly mention in other slides, such as time series analysis, panel data analysis, or quantitative text analysis. So we're gonna talk about the market research process as an organization. You will do it internally. So I'm gonna talk about each process in order to conduct a market research. Firstly, you have to identify and formulate the problem. What that means is that you should identify, if you have one, a problem in organizations that you're trying to find an answer to, or you can determine questions that you want to be answered by this research. An example might be, how can we enter a specific market? This might be another country, it could be another location, or you might have designed a new product that you're trying to get into the market for. How can we increase our online sales? Might be another question you want answers to. Or how big is the market for our product in other countries? I'm so sorry. Secondly, you have to determine the research design. And the research design is directly related to identifying and formulating the problem. After you form your questions and determine the end goal, the answer you're looking for, you should find the most appropriate research design. And I will give 3 examples of research types. The type of your problem will determine the research type. So I will first go over the ambiguous problems. They occur when we know very little about the issues that need to be solved. An example of that would be radically new technologies or products that they have no market yet. And secondly, when faced with somewhat defined problems, we know the issues and variables of those issues for solving the problem, but we don't know how they're related. For example, when an organization wants to export products, it's relatively easy to obtain all sorts of information on market sizes, economic development, and the political and legal system. However, the problem is how these variables impacted exporting success. This we cannot know right away. Is there again a problem with my voice? Or is it clear? Okay. I will go on if we don't say anything about that. And then when we face clearly defined problems, the important issues and variables, as well as their relationship, are clear. What we don't know is how to make the best possible choice. Like I said, these questions might be on how to make decisions for your organization. So clearly defined problems are usually about that. Uh, So the problem of how this situation should be optimized is our main quest. A clearly defined problem may arise when organizations maybe want to change their prices. And uh, for these problems, we have to use a specific research to answer those questions. Now, about the research types, firstly, exploratory research. The objective of this type of search is to explore a problem or situation. As such, exploratory research has several key uses regarding the solving of ambiguous problems. It can help organizations formulate their problems exactly, and through initial research, such as interviewing potential customers, the opportunities and pitfalls may be identified that help determine or refine or refine the research problem. Exploratory research can be used to formulate problems precisely. For example, you can use focus groups, in-depth interviews, projective techniques, observational studies, and ethnographies are the most used techniques for that. Is anyone saying something? So for descriptive research, it is about describing certain phenomena, characteristics, or functions. It can focus on one variable like profitability, or on two or more variables at the same time. For example, what is the relationship between market share and profitability? And how does temperature relate to the sales of ice cream? Descriptive research often builds on previous exploratory research. Because in order to describe something, we should already have a good idea of what we need to measure and how we should measure it. And the key ways in which descriptive research can help us include describing customers, competitors, market segments, and measuring organizations' performance. Descriptive research is frequently used to define market segments or simply segments themselves. Since companies can not always connect with all their customers individually, they divide markets into groups of potential customers with similar needs and wants. Firms can then target each of these segments by positioning themselves in a unique segment of their own. And lastly, casual research is used to understand the relationship between two or more variables. For example, we may want to estimate how changes in the wording of an advertisement impact our sales. Visual research provides exact insights into how those variables relate and may be useful as a test form to try out the changes in the marketing type that you're using as an organization. Experiments are a key type of casual research, and they come in the form of either lab or field experiments. Lab experiments are performed in controlled environments. You can do this in a company or in an academic lab. The reason for is to isolate the effects of one or more variables on a certain outcome. And field experiments are like lab experiments in a way that they examine the impact of one or more variables on a certain outcome. But field experiments are conducted in real-life settings, and so they're not set up in controlled environments. And because of that, reducing or eliminating plausible claims of casualty are not really possible with this method. Once you find your research type that is best for you, then you can go into data collection. The data itself can be explained as a collection of facts that can be used as basis for analysis, reasoning, or discussions. I will talk about four data types: primary data, secondary data, quantitative data, and qualitative data. And after determining the research design, you need to design a sampling plan and choose a data collecting method. This involves whether deciding to use the existing data, which is secondary data, or conduct primary research. While primary data are data that researcher has collected for a specific purpose, another researcher collected the secondary data for another purpose. The example I'm going to give is the US Consumer Expenditure Survey. This site makes data available on what people in the US buy, such as insurance, personal care items, and food. Those are an example of secondary data. It also includes the prices people pay for these products and services. Since these data have already been collected, they are considered secondary data. If a researcher sends out a survey with various questions to find an answer to a specific issue, the collected data are primary data. If primary data are used to answer another research question, they become secondary data. Secondary and primary data have their own specific advantages and disadvantages. I'm gonna firstly talk about secondary data, and its advantages are secondary data is usually cheaper because it is already conducted, and firms keep those data on their own as in order to sell to other clients, and their sample sizes tend to be bigger, and they tend to have more authority because since the sample size is bigger, secondary data are more likely to be believable. And they are usually quick to access because, like I said, they are sold many clients. Therefore, you can find and search those secondary data a lot more quickly. They are easier to compare to other research using the same data, and they are sometimes more accurate compared to primary data. And primary data's advantages are primary data is more recent because you are conducting it yourself. Therefore, you have the most recent information for your use. And they are a lot more specific for the purpose. And the amount of information that you need is the amount of information you're gonna conduct research on. And disadvantages of secondary data are secondary data may be outdated because you might not be able to find such a recent secondary data on the specific purpose that you are searching for. They might not fully fit the problem that you're trying to find the solution of. And there may be hidden errors in the data. It's because you cannot yourself access the data quality. You cannot check it for yourself. And they usually contain only factual data. They do not usually do analysis for you. There is no control over data collection. If you're using a specific data collection method, you might not find it in secondary data. And it might not be reported in the required form for you. You might want to have different units of measurements or definitions, and you might not readily find a secondary data that suits your needs. And the disadvantages of primary data, and they are usually more expensive if you're trying to get it as a service from an external source. And they take longer to collect. It's because it is specific. All the research should be done by hand. That is why it might take a lot longer than secondary data. And the second group is the data can be quantitative or qualitative. Quantitative data are presented in values, and qualitative data are usually not. Qualitative data can be in many forms, like words, stories, observations, pictures, or even audio can be used. Qualitative data's biggest strength is their richness, because they have the potential to offer detailed insights into respondents' perceptions, attitudes, and their intentions. However, the downside is that qualitative data can be interpreted in many ways. You cannot say that certainly this data means this. Because of that, the process of interpreting qualitative data is subjective. To reduce subjectivity, some specific trained researchers should code qualitative data. The distinction between those two data types is closely related to that between they can be turned into each other. You can turn qualitative data into quantitative data, but like I said, there is a certain margin of error in doing so because they are mostly subjective. So after you're deciding what kind of method are you going to use, comes the stage of collecting the actual data. And there are a couple of data collection procedures. And data collection itself is practical, but it can be difficult in the process of market research. And I will talk about the data collection methods as shown on the graphic here. Internal secondary data, I will go a little bit off the mix, but I want to start with the internal data. Internal secondary data are data that companies compile for various reporting or analysis purposes. much of these data have been collected and stored because you have to measure in order to analyze. And many large companies such as enterprise resource planning systems. And these systems very vast amounts of customer transaction and performance data are stored. In general, internal secondary data comprise company records, sales reports, and already existing research studies. External secondary data have been compiled outside a company for a variety of purposes. Important sources of secondary data include governments, trade associations, market research firms, consulting firms, literature databases, and internet, as well as social networks. Governments often provide data that can be used for market research purposes. And much of this information that they offer is free of charge, and it's easy starting point for market research studies. Trade associations are organizations representing different companies whose purpose is to promote their common interests. Market research firms are another source of secondary data, especially large market research firms provide syndicated data that different clients can use. And search engines such as Google or Bing provide easy access to many sources of secondary data. And many specialty databases also provide access to secondary data. And if we want to use Google to research for secondary data, you can do it in a couple different ways. You can use Google Scholar if you're using for scholarly information, such as that found in academic journals. While we can search for any information, specific search items can usually only be accessed if you have an organizational or university or a library password. Secondly, you can use Google Books. You can enter several keywords to research through a very large catalog of books. Google indicates books in which the search results are found and pages on which the keywords exist. So you can find the secondary data you are looking for in Google Books as well. If you cannot find exactly what you're looking for, Google itself allows you to refine your research. After you have searched, you can typically select all images, videos, news, and more to select the type of result you are interested in. Under Tools section, you can select the exact country and time range of specific information that you're looking for. And there are also Google's Public Data Explorer, and they explore a variety of public interest data sets. And lastly, you can try using operators, which are signs that you use to restrict your research. And for example, if you put on a minus symbol before a search word, it excludes this word from your findings. So you can use those specific methods to find the exact data you're looking for. And primary data are they're gathered for a specific research project or task. There are two ways of gathering primary data. You can observe consumers' behavior, for example, by means of observational studies or test markets. As an alternative, you can ask consumers directly by means of surveys, in-depth interviews, predictive techniques, or focus groups. Experiments are a special type of research, which is normally a combination of observing and asking. So I'm gonna first talk about collecting primary data through observations. Observational studies can provide important insights to other market research techniques do not. Observational techniques shed light on consumers and employees' behavior and can help answer questions like how do consumers walk through supermarkets? How do they consume and dispose of products? And how do employees spend their working day? These observational techniques are normally used to understand what people are doing instead of why they're doing it. So if you want to collect quantitative data, you have to design surveys. I'm going to talk about a little how to design a survey for your organizations. There are mainly used for primary market research. Designing a good survey requires several steps. First, you have to determine your survey goal. And secondly, you have to determine the type of questions you have to ask people. And after that, you have to decide on the questions and scale, as well as the design of the questions you're going to ask. Personal, there are different types of interviews. And firstly, I'm going to talk about personal interviews. They're also called face-to-face interviews. They can obtain high response rates because engagement with the respondents are maximized. Therefore, it allows rich information to be collected. And moreover, since people find it hard to walk away from interviews, it is possible to collect answers to a reasonably long set of questions. And personal interviews can support long surveys because of that. It is also the best type of data collection for open-ended responses. Secondly, personal interviews can obtain high response rates since the engagement you're going to have with the respondents are maximized. And secondly, we're going to talk about web surveys. They are also referred as CIWI or computer-assisted web interviews. They're often the least expensive to conduct, and they can be set up very quickly. Researchers themselves can administer web surveys to very large populations, and they can set it up internationally as well. Because besides the fixed cost of setting up a survey, the marginal cost of administering additional web surveys are relatively very low. So I'm going to give us a summary of some of the key choices when you're designing a survey's items. So the question is, can all the respondents answer the question asked? And for this, you have to ensure that all potential respondents can answer all items. If they cannot, you should ask the screener questions to direct them. If the respondents cannot answer questions, they should be able to skip them. The other question is, can the respondents construct or recall the answers? If the answer is no, you should use the other methods to obtain information. For example, secondary data or observations. And moreover, you should ask the respondents about major aspects before zooming in on the details that help them recall the answers. Another question is, do the respondents want to answer is each question? If the questions concern sensitive subjects, you should check whether they can be omitted. If not, stress the confidentiality of the answers, and you should also mention why these answers are useful for the researchers. And in conducting a survey, which should be your choice, open-ended or closed-ended questions? You should keep the subsequent coding in mind if you're going to use one. If easy coding is possible beforehand, design a set of exhaustive answer categories. And also you should remember that open-ended scale items have a much lower response rate than closed-ended items. And how you should word your survey. The number of response categories. You should use visual analog scales. And you should make your surveys as clear as possible. You should not word it too much so that it is complicated for the respondents to understand. And after collecting all of the data that you can in the above mentioned methods, you should go to data analysis part. And before going into analyzing the data part, I think we can take a little break for 15 minutes because I'm having trouble sleeping. And I will see you all in 15 minutes, if that's okay. I cannot get any response. I'm going to pause the recording and I'll be here in 25. When you collect all the data that you needed, then you have to analyze those data. Because if you do not make the analysis part, then you will not find the answers that you're looking for. And there are a couple
Excuse me, Miss Hall.
Yes?
I think it has some noise. Your voice.
I couldn't understand you. I'm sorry.
It has some noise. It's okay. Now it's okay.
There are a couple of analysis types that I'm going to mention. Diagnostic analysis, predictive analysis, descriptive analysis, statistical analysis, and text analysis. You have to determine which type of analysis that will work for your specific questions. And diagnostic analysis, you try to answer the question of why did this happen? You should use insights gained from your statistical analysis. And usually analysis use diagnostic analysis to identify specific patterns in data. Ideally, the analysts themselves find similar patterns that existed in the past, and consequently, they can use those solutions to resolve the present challenges. And predictive analysis usually answer the question of what is most likely to happen by using patterns found in older data as well as current data that you have. the one who the analysts themselves predict future events. While there is no such thing as 100% accurate forecasting, the odds improve if the analysts have plenty of detailed information and the discipline to research it thoroughly. Third one is prescriptive analysis. If you combine the insights gained from the other data analysis types, you can form a prescriptive analysis. Sometimes an issue cannot be solved only with one analysis type, and instead you can use multiple insights to reach for the answers to your questions. And statistical analysis usually answer the questions of what happened. And this analysis covers data collection, analysis, modeling, interpretation, and presentation, and usually using dashboards. The statistical analysis breaks down into two subcategories. First is descriptive, which works with either complete or selections of summarized numerical data. It tells about means and deviations in continuous data and percentages as well as frequencies in those categorical data. And the second subcategory is inferential. Inferential analysis works with samples derived from complete data, and analysts can arrive at different conclusions from the same comprehensive data set just by choosing different sample sizes. And lastly, text analysis is, which also is called data mining. Text analysis uses databases and data mining tools to discover patterns residing in large data sets. It transforms raw data into useful business information. And text analysis is arguably is the most straightforward and the most direct method of data analysis. And once you conclude your data analysis stage, you will then come to the last two parts of market research. You have to discuss your findings. You have to first set and interpret those analyses within your organization, what it means for your organizations. You have to discuss and present the findings to related parts of your organizations. Then at the follow-up stage, you have to decide what kind of business decisions you're going to make by the findings of research. And then you can utilize the research market for the gain of your organization. And I know I have given you many technical information about market research, but I want to give you a basic summary of it before finishing. First of all, if you want to have a market research done for your organizations, you can do it within your organization, or you can do it externally. You can get it as a service from an outside source. And these methods are called internal and external methods. So if you want to do it internally, you can employ a specific researcher for your organization, or you can build a department responsible for market research. And if you want to get the research done externally, you can have this service from specific kinds of firms. Some of those firms provide full service, and some of them provide limited service. which one is the most suitable for your research, you can choose those firms specifically. If you want to do it internally, and then you have to plan your market research process. And the steps you're going to take is firstly identify and formulate the problem. You have to find the specific questions that you want to answer. If there's a problem in your organizations, how can you solve those problems can be appropriate questions. If you want to go into different markets, you can try to find information about those markets, or if you want to produce a new product, you have to ask questions about how to design or sell those products. And secondly, you have to determine the research design. How will you conduct this research? How are you going to, what kind of method are you going to use to collect the data that you need? And after that, you have to design the sample and method of data collection. You might use surveys for your research. You can use external sources. You can use even Google for your data. If you want to have secondary data, you can use all of those methods. Or you want to have primary data, you still can use external sources, so they can conduct specific searches for the specific question.
ما أولادنا شكل Amerika'sı yani Amerika'daki.
Which kaçar aslında bu uğursu jobbedi mi?
Hayır baba,
Anglisçe verdi bu düşünmadım ben de. Bunun sadece çıkarıyor. Ulan ilk bir şey.
And after that, you have to collect your data as with the methods that you find the most suitable for you. And after that, you have to analyze the data that you have. And still in this stage, you can analyze those data for yourself, or you can get the service from an analyst or another firm that will analyze these data for you. And then you have to, in organization, interpret, discuss, and present the findings of your research so that you can proceed with what you have to do for your organizations. The follow-up stage. The follow-up stage is that you completed your market research, you find the answers that you needed, then what you have to do to be more successful in your business. The follow-up stage is the way you're going to interpret and interpret those findings into your organization. Okay, I want to thank you for your time and patience. And like I said yesterday, if you have any questions or other inquiries, you can contact me at my email address that you can see. And I will be answering those emails as soon as possible. Now, I don't have anything to say more about this class, and we will have one last class on Friday. And it's going to be about presentation skills. And until then, like I said, you can contact me anytime with my email. I will try to answer every single one of the emails that I get. Again, thank you for listening to me. And I will see you on Friday.